Alright, with the start of a new year, we should probably start getting into like a new type of mentality in essence. So I'm sure everyone is, or if you're not familiar with the victim mentality, it's the kind of mentality where you're basically blaming everything, everyone, and everywhere else for your problems. No matter the situation, you're always blaming someone, something, or whatever else except for you. So the whole idea is like to get rid of that victim mentality and stop blaming others, other things, other people, whatever, to sit there and start taking responsibility. Now, of course, the idea of this video is taking responsibility for things you have control over. Now, there's a lot of things we don't have control over. We don't have control over the weather, whether it snows, rains, like we get hurricanes, whatever. We don't have control over other people, for instance, like family members, friends, co-workers. We don't really necessarily have control over those. What we do, though, is have control over ourselves and our, in a sense, reactions to things. So, for instance, coming through the things that we have control over: community, nutrition, training, recovery, mobility, mindfulness, being consistent with that stuff and everything. Those are the things we have control over. Now, community is basically the people that we surround ourselves with, plus right here what we expose to ourselves digitally. So if we have family members that are toxic, we pretty much need to get them out of our lives. Now, of course, coworkers with the is in the realm of work, sometimes we have maybe toxic coworkers that we can't necessarily get rid of because we may not necessarily be in a position of like hiring or firing or whatever. So what we can do is try and like in that regard, could we quite possibly like transfer to another department? Like maybe I'm working in accounting and like the accounting department, and like I'm in accounts payable, and I have a coworker that is extremely toxic, causes nothing but problems. Maybe I could get transferred over to like another department of accounts receivable or something, and all the people there are a whole lot better. Eventually, that toxic person, if the company that you're working for actually runs things smoothly, that toxic person should be getting rid of and everything. So you might be able to transfer out and then get back into like your old department or whatever. So that's just an example of like a situation with coworkers. But we might not necessarily have control over like who we work with and everything. Sometimes, yeah, okay, we just got to put up with people, and like again, how we react is what we do have control over. Now, outside of work, like again with like the toxic family members, or like I use the happy hour analogy. Are you surrounding yourself with toxic people by going to happy hour, or are you surrounding yourself with good people by going to the gym on a Friday night? And the same thing goes with digital content. Are you getting into like all that stupid shit that's out here on the internet and everything, and just constantly, oh my god, look at all this, and getting frustrated? Or are you getting into content and stuff that is going to sit there and help you improve and stuff? Getting it's like YouTube channels like Kathleen X, the Bioneer, stuff I've done videos on, where you can sit here, oh, here's stuff I can use to improve myself. That's stuff we have control over with our community. Surrounding ourselves with the right type of people, and engaging in the right kind of content. Nutrition, we have control over what we eat or what we consume. So are we going to sit here and like treat ourselves like a garbage can, constantly sucking down soda and like donuts and ding dongs and everything? Or are we actually going to sit here and eat how we're supposed to, like what's now known as healthy? So now, of course, that is a process, and of course, there's a whole elimination process where, okay, first and foremost, you should maybe start cutting one or two things out at a time. Maybe you cut out that soda, replace it with like sparkling water, because oh hey, look, you're trying to trick your brain with that carbonation or something. Then maybe you start like cutting out donuts and maybe adding like fruit for snacks and stuff like that. So it's an elimination process. You're slowly cutting stuff out and everything. Training, you have what you have control over is whether or not you get to the gym. Now, of course, with New Year's resolutions, a lot of times people want to go from a 0 to 100 and have unrealistic expectations of wanting to lose 100 pounds in like the first month and everything. What we have control over is, yes, we can go, but we also want to like tamper that with like realistic expectations. Can I lose 100 pounds in a month? No. Could I quite possibly lose that 100 pounds in a course over the course of this next year and everything? Yes. Okay. So then we like, okay, go in with a plan like, I have control over what I do. So like, I might be in essence like morbidly obese where I need to lose that 100 pounds. Okay. So what do I do? Getting into the last one I just talked about with nutrition. We do have control over what we eat and everything. So there's a big thing that like will sit here and help us lose weight, because it's a lot harder to eat on your nutrient dense foods like your fruits and veggies and your things that are high in fiber, high in protein, because you're going to get a lot more satiated out of stuff like that than you are your calorie dense stuff like your potato chips, your sodas, and stuff like that. Same thing goes with training. Like, okay, well, I want to do this smart, so I ease myself into it, slowly build myself. Okay, maybe I can only do 25, 30 minutes on the elliptical. That's the starting point. And then each week you slowly build up. Like, maybe you start off with half an hour, maybe you build up to 32 minutes the next week. Then you jump up. Oh, hey, look, I can do 36 this week, and then you build yourself up to be able to do an hour. And then once you do that, you start. Oh, hey, look, based on like what the elliptical is showing, I'm burning 750 calories in an hour. Well, then I have a number to beat and everything. Okay, so then I go from 750 to 775 to 800. Then like you work yourself up like that, and the same thing goes with lifting. Maybe I can sit there and only bench press the 45-pound bar the first week. Okay, well, next week I add on like another 10 pounds. Okay, now I'm up to 55. I can do the same number of reps and everything. Then you maybe jump up to 75. All right, there we go. And then slowly and steadily build yourself up over the course of the year. The same thing goes with the recovery. We have control over how well we regulate our sleep schedule. Now, of course, if you're someone who is an insomniac and needs medication or maybe something that's over the counter to kind of help with that, then yes, that's something you have to do. So now the overarching theme with all these is like, if you whether or not you need professional help, I'm going to say seek out professional help for medical, for both physical and mental health and everything, because you might have like a physical ailment that you have to work around. So you have to work with your doctor, like, oh, hey, look, I might have this condition that I have to work around and like kind of like tweak things to be able to better suit my unique situation. The same thing goes with like mental health, which is like mindfulness. So I'll get into that real quick in a second or thing. So now mobility, things like dynamic and static stretching, things like yoga. So like for instance, you could quite possibly do like a 6-day split or whatever, like what I did when I first got back in. 3 days of like a full body strength training, 3 days of cardio on the elliptical. That 7th day, what you can do is do like a pure yoga class, work on that mobility, and like of course after all those 6 workouts that you do, like what I did, you start getting into dynamic and static stretching to work on your mobility and everything. So then now getting into mindfulness with like mental health, it's a good idea to get into like professional help. And now whether or not you need it, it's always good to touch base. So like get into like a therapy sessions with a counselor or like a therapist or psychologist or whatever, to kind of if you don't necessarily need it, you get that baseline like, oh, okay, so I have a good head on my shoulders to begin with, so I don't necessarily need professional help after a couple sessions or whatever. A good so regardless of whether or not you need professional help or whatever, of course I'm always going to say get into it regardless to see if you do need it or not. Journaling, meditation are 2 things that you do have control over on whether or not you do for your mental health. Now, like meditation is not sitting there singing like, oh, kumbaya. You're just sitting there like getting into like, okay, getting up in the air. So now there are guided meditations that you can go onto YouTube or whatever. So for that, now the thing of what I do is journaling at the end of the day, do that mental check-in, like, oh, hey, look, what happened today? What happened in the last 24 hours? As you're sitting there writing stuff down, you can do that mental check-in. Oh, okay, so this is how my day went and everything. So as you're writing, like, okay, and then like, oh yes, okay, something popped up, this popped up, and this is how I dealt with it. Yeah, I didn't deal with it that great. So now going forward, when similar situations pop up, I know, okay, well, that didn't work. Now I can start maybe handling things better that way. And of course, the big thing is that ties all this together is consistency. You have control over whether you get those things done on a daily basis and everything. So now you got to kind of go in with this with the expectations that this isn't necessarily a quick fix. It's a lifelong process. You're going to have to get into it over the and kind of look at it as like an investment, not as like an expense. Don't look at it like, oh, I have to get my sleep in more. Oh, I have to work on mobility. I have to spend an hour at the gym doing strength training. Look at these as like investments. Like, okay, well, I'm getting these things in order, so that way, okay, I may be like in my late 30s right now. By doing this stuff now, and I keep doing it over the course of months, years, of course, and of course over the course of my life, when I do end up retiring in my late 60s or whatever, now I'm in such a much better place that I can actually enjoy retirement, and I'm not like wheelchair bound. I'm not on like a half a dozen medications. My physical and mental health are like good and solid, and that way I can actually enjoy retirement instead of being like the youngest person in the nursing home. So get rid of the victim mentality where you're constantly blaming others. Get into that growth mindset where like I just laid everything out on the stuff that we do have control over, and over the course of several months, quite possibly a couple years, when you look back, the time will pass anyway, so you'll be in a much better place, and you look back and be like, damn, look at all this like work I've done. I'm in a much better place. Let me see how much else I can do over the course of like the X amount of time, over the next course, several months, several years, whatever. And so it's going to start bleeding out into other areas of your life. So this is what you need to do in the course of this year, getting into like the New Year's resolutions. Ditch the victim mentality where you're blaming everything and everyone, and start getting into the growth mindset. Start taking responsibility. Like, these are the things I have control over. Let's start executing on this stuff, so that way I can set myself up for future success going through life, going forward.